Get started. So hi everyone, I'm Nicola and I'm a student recruitment officer here at Lancaster University, and I'll be delivering this presentation for you guys today. And then I'm also joined by Bracken, my colleague who is a student recruitment assistant, so she can give a little wave or introduce herself.
Hi. That was so enthusiastic. It's a Saturday afternoon.
I love it. I love it. I love the enthusiasm on a Saturday afternoon. Love it. So Bracken is just going to be kind of helping me present a few of the slides, and then she'll be here throughout the webinar to answer any questions that you have. So if you do have any questions, please just pop them in the Q&A section and Bracken will get round to answering them. Okay, so we will get started. So just before we go into like the main body of the interview preparation content, we just wanted to let you know whereabouts Lancaster is, because we do come across quite a few students that do live in the north and they still have no idea where Lancaster is on the map. So we just thought we'd pop this in the presentation. So you can see we're just on the northwest of England there, just above Manchester, just above Liverpool, and just on the outskirts of like the South Lake District as well. So really we're right in the centre of the UK. So it is a fantastic location there for Lancaster University. So, right, so this is what we are going to be having a look at today. So we're going to have a look at why are interviews used. We're going to be having a look at the really important preparation to help you be really prepared and hopefully do really well in your interviews. We'll have a look at some practical tips. And then really importantly, if you don't take anything else away from this presentation today, you take away the STAR strategy. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on and how important that is in those interviews. Okay, so seeing if this moves on. All I can see is a white screen. I'm not sure whether, Bracken, can you see a white screen or has it moved on for you?
White screen for me.
Right, sorry about this, guys. Just bear with me. If I try and click through. Right, now I can see black. Oh, okay. Right, we'll try this again. And there we go. Perfect. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So let's have a look at why interviews are used. So you probably already know the answer to this question, but they are used to assess your suitability for the job or the course that you've applied for at university. And then in the interview, they'll ask you lots of different questions. They might ask you to do some tasks or do a presentation in order to see that you meet their suitability for the job or the course. So these are the different things that they'll be assessing in interviews. So they will definitely assess your competencies, and we'll have a look at some questions around competencies a little bit later on. They'll be assessing definitely your skills and your strengths. They'll be assessing your motivation, so either your motivations towards a subject at university or your motivations towards the job. And they'll also assess your personal qualities as well. So they will form lots of different questions or different tasks in order to get the answers to all these different kind of qualities and skills that they want to know about. So what do universities interview for? So not every single university will interview for the same courses. So Cambridge and Oxford, they tend to interview for all of their courses. And then it completely depends on the subjects and the university whether they are going to offer an interview. Some courses you will always have an interview in that course because of the course. So for example, health-based courses, so medicine, dentistry, social care, they always ask for interviews no matter what university it's at. So at Lancaster, we interview for medicine, social work and architecture. And then last year, we actually also interviewed for physics and engineering. So it's really important for you to know and keep up to date to whether you are going to be involved in an interview process. So you have time to prep for that interview process. Now, as you can see from this data here, the interviews do change between year and year. So if you had a friend that came to Lancaster Lancaster, and they might have said, oh, I never had an interview for physics, but this year we might have started doing interviews for physics. So just make sure you go to the source, go to the university and ask them whether you are going to be involved in an interview, and then you can have lots of time for preparation to make sure that you do really well in the interview. So we have taken some quotes here from which university, and basically which university actually spoke to universities and asked them what they were looking for in their applicants and during the interview. So there's a few quotes here, so I'll just read them out. So one of the quotes says, they will ask you about your reasons for wanting to study that particular subject, and they will make sure that you're aware of what one second, and they will make sure you are aware of what the course involves and what the career options are. So really important that you have some fantastic reasons for wanting to study that particular course. Talk about your interest, talk about what you're excited in, have a look at the different modules for that course at that university, pick some of those modules out that you're going to be really excited to be involved in. And you are aware of all the different things that come with that course, if there's options for study abroad, if there's options for different work placements, things like that. And then you can always talk about the career options as well that you're interested in, that course will help you to go into. And then the next quote says, they are looking for evidence that you are thinking independently, that you are willing to engage with new ideas beyond the scope of your school or college syllabus. Now this bit is really important. Really important that you are actively getting involved in extra academic activities that are outside of your syllabus, outside of your curriculum, because this will show your passion, your interest, and your motivation for the course and really help you stand out. So what are the different types of interviews? So there's 5 different types here. So there's one-to-one interviews, there's a panel interview, there's a group interview, there's assessment centre interviews, and then there's multiple mini interviews as well. So I thought it'd be really interesting to know what kind of interviews you've been involved in already. So if you can just pop that in the chat, and I'm going to ask Bracken to read those out, because it would be really interesting to see. Is there any coming through, Bracken?
We've had face-to-face and video, one-to-one. Another one saying one-to-one. We've also had an interesting question that we can answer later based on recorded interviews, which I think will be really
very interesting. Yeah, so I was guessing that, I'm guessing a lot of you are probably like 16, 17 at this event today. So you probably have only had either a one-to-one interview or a panel interview. I know when I was 17 and I was going for jobs like part-time jobs in a local bar, I worked at Blackpool Tower. It was all kind of one-to-one or a panel. But as soon as I started, apologies, that's my dog barking in the background. So as soon as I went into kind of my career and we're getting the interviews based upon like professional career, then I got a lot more group interviews. I've had assessments as well, and I've also had experience of mini interviews. So one of the group interviews that I was involved in was, there was 5 of us, so 5 of the interviewees were all put together in a group. We'd never met each other before, and we were asked to choose 5 items from a list of items that we would take to a desert island with us. Now, the reason for this task wasn't to see what items we were going to take. They didn't really care what items we were going to take with us. What they wanted to see is how we communicated, how we listened to each other, how we engaged, how confident we were talking to people we hadn't met before. And they were all the skills and qualities that were important for that job. So that was really interesting. It was really fun as well and really interesting. Assessment centre. So I have been assessed. Before this job working at Lancaster, I worked at a big 6th form college in Blackpool, and my English had to be assessed. So I actually took an English paper to ensure that my English was up to scratch to work at the college. I've been involved in a panel. So that's where you might have 4 or 5 different staff members asking you different questions, and I've also been involved in one-to-one. So you will definitely, throughout your kind of professional career, start seeing more of these different types of interviews. So really important you're aware of them. And you also ask whoever's interviewing you what is how they're going to interview you. So usually they will send you information or an email and say, this is your interview day. You're going to be involved in a group interview. There's going to be a one-to-one interview. There's going to be assessment as well. If that information doesn't come through with your invite, get in contact with them, ring them, email them. It shows initiative, and they will like that you've wanted to find extra information in order to prepare for the interview process. So please don't be worried thinking, oh, if I email them or ring them, they might think I'm silly because I'm asking further information. That is not the case. It will look good. It will look good in your favor. Okay, so what will you be asked to do? So you might be asked to solve a problem. So that was like my group interview where we had to solve a problem of what we wanted to take to the desert island with us. You might be asked to solve a challenge. You might be asked to talk about a piece of work that you've pre-prepared. So I sat on an interview panel a couple of weeks ago for our admissions team at Lancaster University, and we asked them to prepare a piece of work and then bring it with them to the interview and talk through it and to describe their thinking behind that task. You will definitely be asked to talk around your personal statement when you are invited to a university interview. So make sure you know your personal statement inside and out. And if you've said you've read a book, make sure you've read the book and you can expand on it. If you've said you've been involved in a certain activity, make sure you can talk about that activity in more detail than what's in your personal statement. They will definitely ask you competent, I can't say that word today, competency-based questions. And we're going to have a look at those a little bit later on and the main kind of questions that they'll ask you. And we'll work through some examples of how to answer them. And they might ask you to do a role play or present a presentation. So there's lots of different things that they can ask you to do, but that should all come in the interview invite. Okay, so the top interview questions, these are the questions without fail that I've always been asked to answer in my professional interviews. So I've always been asked to talk about my strengths and my skills, always been asked to talk about what weaknesses I have, always 100% had a question around teamwork, and always had a question about working well under pressure. It's really important for you to prepare for an interview to have a look at the top kind of interview questions and start preparing your answers for those top interview questions, because it's most likely they probably will ask them. So we'll have a look at how to answer these top interview questions now. So the first one is when they ask you to talk about your strengths or your skills. So obviously in preparation, you need to know what your strengths and your skills are. Really important that you're really realistic in your answer. Don't just be listing off 15, 20 different skills. What they're looking for is, your top 3 skills that you can talk about in a lot of detail. And it's really important that these strengths or skills are related to that job. So when you are looking for jobs, they will post a personal specification, and in that personal specification it tells you all about the qualities and the skills that they're looking for in their applicant. So definitely print that off, highlight it, have a look at the different skills they're looking for, and you can then talk about those skills in the job. When you're looking at the personal spec and you think, I don't have any of those skills, then that job probably isn't the job for you. So definitely make sure you're looking at the skills in the personal spec. Okay, so answering the question, best way to answer it is obviously state your skill. Please don't just list all of your skills that you have and then that's it, you've done with the answer. Make sure you provide an example of how you used that strength or the skill that you used, and then go on to describe the kind of impact that skill and that strength had to the team, the organisation, whoever was involved. So we've popped here a really great example answer to answering a question regarding your skills and strengths. So I'm going to ask Bracken to read this out for us.
No problem. Okay, so my biggest strength is that I can think on my feet and work under pressure. As an event I'll say that again. As an events manager at Company X, I was organising an IT conference that needed last minute changes due to a speaker cancelling because of an emergency. I allocated more time to each speaker and added a Q&A section at the end of each speech. I also encouraged the present speakers to talk about their business and personal experience more in depth after they were done with their speech. In the end, everything went well without any other problems popping up.
Fabulous, thank you. So yeah, we really liked this answer because they spoke about their skills and their strengths. So they said they can think well on their feet. They said they can work well under pressure. And then they said what role they were in. So they were a manager. And then they said the actual task. They were organizing an IT conference. They then went on to say what the challenge was. So the speaker hadn't turned up. And they then spoke about how they use their strengths so they can think on their feet and they can work under pressure to get through this challenge. And then they kind of summed it up by saying, in the end, everything went well without any other problems popping up. So they've really described in detail a certain scenario that they were put in and how they dealt with that scenario because of the strengths that they have. My technology is not working today. I'm trying to move on to the next slide and it's not wanting to move on. There we go. Perfect. I think it was just being a bit slow. So a second question that you will probably get asked about in an interview is a question around your weaknesses. And the reason that interviewers ask about your weaknesses is because they want to know you've got a healthy level of self-awareness. No one is perfect, and the interviewers know that not everyone is perfect. Then themselves are not going to be perfect, and they just want to know that you're open and honest, because that's a really nice quality to have. And they also want to know that if you have a weakness, that you are pursuing self-improvement and growth opportunities to be able to combat that weakness. That's a really good skill and quality within itself. So answering the question, choose the weakness that will not prevent you from succeeding in the role. So for example, when I went for my job at Lancaster, the whole part of my job was presenting to people I've never met before. I presented to a hall of 300 different people. So I have to be super confident within my job. So if I'd gone in and said, my weakness is that I'm really not confident, I'm not very good at presenting, I don't like meeting new people, I'm not going to get the job, because that is the key role of my job. So make sure when you're choosing a weakness that it's not going to prevent you from getting the role. Also, provide an example of how you've worked to improve your weakness. So don't just say, I've got this weakness and then move on. Talk around the weakness and say what activities, what things are you involved in for you to try and develop that weakness and try and kind of combat that weakness as well. So we have a really good example here of how to answer this question. So I'm going to hand you back over to Bracken.
Okay, so with this one, just minimize the chat. I'm incredibly self-motivated, and I sometimes find it difficult to delegate responsibility when I feel I can finish the task well myself. However, when I became manager in my last role, it became critical I learned to delegate tasks. To maintain a sense of control when delegating tasks, I implemented a project management system to oversee the progress of a project. This system enabled me to improve my ability to delegate efficiently.
Brilliant. Thanks, Bracken. So what we really liked about this is they started their answer with a positive. They are incredibly self-motivated. Fantastic. That's brilliant. Really positive thing there. And then they've just said they sometimes find it difficult to delegate, but however, they've now started to have more experience of delegating as a manager, and through this experience they've learned that they can implement different management systems to help them overcome this weakness, and then they've gone on to say how this has enabled them to improve their ability. So there's lots of positives in this, which is really important when talking about your weaknesses. Don't just kind of talk about the negative of that weakness, try and turn it into a positive. Okay, so STAR technique, really important when you're answering questions, and all the answers we've just looked at have answered their questions using the STAR technique. So really important when you're answering questions, you need to talk about the situation you were in, talk about the task that you were given, say the action that you then did to complete the task or the challenge, and then talk about the result. All of the professional interviews I went for straight after university, I had never heard about the STAR technique. And when I got my feedback, the feedback was, we really liked you, you were confident, you were bubbly, you just didn't explain your answers very well. Have you heard of the STAR technique? And I was like, no, what is this STAR technique? And I honestly, about 3 of my interviews that I didn't get told me to learn the STAR technique. So I was there on Google learning the STAR technique, and I learned how to then answer a question using the STAR technique, because it just goes into much more detail and helps the interviewer really understand your skills and your strengths. So this is just a quick example of how to answer a question regarding if you've worked well under pressure. So I'll let you read that them yourselves, and I'll just talk around it whilst you're reading it. So they spoke about the situation of a team that they've worked in. They spoke about the tasks that they were given. So they were under pressure to meet a deadline. They spoke about someone wasn't very ill, and that's why it wasn't very well, and that's why they were then under pressure to meet the deadline. And then they've spoken about the action they took in order to overcome this challenge. And then they've spoken about the result as well, that everything kind of went to plan and they got fantastic grades. So you really get an understanding of the skills and what this person actually was involved in with this answer. And they've used I a lot. Really important that when they're asking you a question specifically about yourself, make sure you answer with I. Be confident to say I. The interview panel I sat on a couple of weeks ago, a lot of the interviewees kept saying we, and we were like, we don't want to know about anyone else, we want to know about you. So make sure you have the confidence to use that letter I. Okay. So practical tips. So this is preparation now going into your interview. So make sure you do your homework, make sure you get to know the company, the university, so you can add some of this information in some of your answers, and it just shows that you are extra motivated towards that university or motivated towards that job. And you know, you've really taken time to get to know the university and get to know the company. That shows the passion and interest in the job and university as well. Make sure you rehearse your answers. Make sure you do a little bit of role play with whoever you live with at home, your friends, your family. Honestly, it will help you so much. And in that role play, whoever is role playing with you, tell them about the STAR technique and say, look, I need to be answering my questions in this format. Can you check that I do that? And they can check and give you feedback on it. Honestly, it will be so helpful. And then obviously make sure you make the right impression. I'm sure you all know this already, but you know, smart, professional, eye contact, shaking the hands, if it is a face-to-face interview. Prepare questions to ask as well, really important. Every single interview I've had has always asked me to prepare, have always asked me if I have any questions. So really important that you do prepare a couple. It just shows that you're engaged and interested to find out more as well. So these are some questions that you could ask at a university interview. You could ask about the teaching and assessment. You could ask about the different module choices. You could ask about what they're actually looking for in their students. And you can ask about extracurricular things that you could get involved in as well. And then what kind of things should you ask at a job interview? So you could ask them why they decided to come to the company. You could ask them about the biggest challenges they're facing at the moment. You could ask them about training and development. And you could also ask them about the company and team culture. So definitely really important that you prepare beforehand and you know exactly where you're going. When I went for my interview at Lancaster University, it is absolutely huge, the campus. And luckily I had a friend that worked there, so she sent me a map. She drew on the map exactly where I was going, because you want it to run smoothly, everything on the run up to your interview. Because if you can't find it and you don't know where you're going, you get panicky and you think you're going to be late. So definitely put everything into place to make sure you know exactly where you're going. You've got battery on your phone in case you're going to be late, so you can give them a call. Make sure you humanize your panel as well. So this really helps kind of calming your nerves. every single panelist that's interviewing you has had an interview, so they know exactly how it feels and exactly what it's like. So just remember that when you go into your interview, they are just the same as you. And really, some really nice top tips is doing some breathing exercises before you go in. You can Google lots of breathing exercises to see how you can keep yourself calm, relax your shoulders, kind of strengthen your spine a little bit. And again, these kind of practices will help you throughout the interview with keeping you calm. Other things that you could do to really kind of calm your nerves is have a look at TED Talks, lots out there on faking it and power posing. You can look at articles and books on confidence and public speaking, and then just speak to people around you as well and get tips from them. That's my dog again. He's been good all day and now he's just being horrible dog. Apologies. So during the interview, just make sure you practice active listening, that you're responding to the questions or you're responding to prompts as well. Make sure you're giving them eye contact and give yourself time to answer the question. If you need a little bit of time to answer the question, just tell them, communicate with the panel and just say, can I just have a little bit of time to think about this? Or if you want them to repeat the question, please don't be worried about asking them to repeat the question. And then finally, to end on, just what you need to be doing when you've finished your interview is reflect and definitely make notes. Write down the top kind of questions or write down all the questions that they asked you, so you can be prepared for another interview. You've got a bank of questions there, and ask for feedback as well. You'll really learn from your feedback. So whether it's a phone conversation or whether it's written feedback, it's so important. It's probably not nice to read or listen to at the beginning, and when you get that feedback, and it might not be the best feedback, but you'll definitely learn from it and it will turn into a positive experience. Okay, so just quickly to end on, we do have lots of webinars coming up at Lancaster to help with your progression into HE. So we've got lots of general webinars with afternoons with Lancaster, and then we have lots of subject-specific webinars coming up as well. So if you do want to find out a little bit more about Lancaster, please go to our Connect page at the bottom there. And then you can chat to all our ambassadors on our webpage as well if you have any questions after today. And that's the information there. Okay, so thank you so much. I know that's bang on past. I don't know whether we've got any time for questions.
Yeah, I think you've had 2 questions in the chat. I know Bracken's tried to answer them with a comment, but I mean, we have got a couple of minutes because there's only one session left in the day. So if you wanted to sort of quick fire answer them.
Yes, please.
Yeah, great. Over to you then, Bracken.
Okay, so instead of face-to-face interviews, some are recorded where you essentially just speak to the webcam with questions written on the screen. Do you have any tips for these type of interviews? My most important tip for this is don't write a script, have prompts, bullet point. It will sound much more natural if you can refer to something as a bullet point and then expand on an answer rather than just reading from a script. So I'd say definitely have some preparation on what you're going to say to answer that question, including your examples, but make sure it's not written as a script so that it actually comes across as you're speaking naturally, and it will show your personality as a result. Second question, how could you ensure you are a professional on a video interview since there is no shaking hands? Number 1, if there's multiple people, every time they introduce themselves, make sure you say hello back. Number 2, smart casual dress. Make sure you're not dressed to just be lounging at home. Actually put on something that you'd wear to an interview, even if it's just to sit in front of a camera. 3, clear and concise answers. So it can be, it doesn't feel as weird as you think it will. Answering a question calmly, taking your time to answer it, and having a nice, polite, calm, well-paced voice will go a long way when answering questions on a video interview. I think that's me very quickly trying to give some pointers there. Do you have anything else to add, Nick?
No, I think they were great pointers. Well done. And I sat on an interview panel a couple of weeks ago, which was virtual, it was online. And yeah, you're completely right, Bracken. You know, just make sure it's really hard because all the people are on your screen. But just make sure you're looking directly into the camera rather than looking at the screen, because then the panelists they'll feel like you are looking and answering their question directly to them. So make sure you're looking at your webcam. Do you know what? I've lost it. I can't speak anymore. Web camera.
Give up. Just give up.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Those were answered perfectly, and great questions, guys. I think that's so relevant to the situation now, and a lot of the interviews will definitely come across. Thank you, Nicola, Bracken, for sharing your insights from both points of view as an interviewee and also as someone who's interviewing. That's been really helpful. And for anyone who's attended this talk, and if you have any sort of questions or thoughts after the session that you're thinking over, head to the exhibition hall, and you can head to Lancaster University's booth, pick up any documents or resources and chat to the team there. And this is also accessible after the live event today. So I guess finally, thanks everyone for attending, and thank you, Nicola and Bracken, for sharing this talk with us today.
Thank you as well.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone. Bye.